Welcome to the debate. You know, in computer science, when you build a predictive model, you expect the output to, well, actually make logical sense based on the inputs.
Right. If you feed the algorithm clean data, you get a clear result.
Exactly. But when the data points violently contradicting one another, you have to question the entire model. Today, we are auditing a deeply unsettling real-world model. We're looking at the tragic and frankly highly controversial death of the 26-year-old AI prodigy and OpenAI whistleblower, Suchir Balaji.
Yeah, the inputs and the outputs in this case definitely paint two completely different pictures.
They really do. Before we dive into the bloody evidence and the missing packages, just a quick housekeeping note. Please take a second to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay updated on our discourse.
And real quick, a 15-second update on a related matter we've been tracking. The Martin Stevens versus OpenAI situation is currently in a voluntary quiet period.
Right, which means his dead man switch is unactivated.
Exactly. Unactivated, meaning Martin is completely safe. There has been no lawsuit filed yet, and to be absolutely clear, this does not imply any progress toward a settlement. It is simply a quiet period.
Good to clarify. So, transitioning back to the intense opacity we're dealing with today, our focus is a startling new interview with Suchir Balaji's mother. She is publicly alleging her son was murdered to silence his whistleblowing about OpenAI's data practices.
It's a profoundly heavy accusation.
It is. So the core question we have to answer is this. Do the physical anomalies and the timeline of Balaji's whistleblowing fundamentally undermine the official suicide ruling and point to a systemic cover-up?
Or does this narrative reflect the grieving family's tragic misinterpretation of a standard, albeit deeply flawed police investigation?
Right. And I'll be representing the perspective that when you look at the physical evidence from the private autopsy, the one commissioned by the family and conducted by Dr. Joseph Cohen, the official narrative just instantly falls apart. I mean, we are talking about a 30 to 45 degree downward bullet trajectory that missed the brain entirely, a separate head injury, and a completely unexplained bloody clip-in wig left at the scene.
Yeah, the wig is definitely a major sticking point for people.
It's massive. Add in a medical examiner who allegedly cleared this complex environment in just 40 minutes, and it heavily points toward an investigation improperly rushed to a predetermined conclusion.
I absolutely recognize the gravity of those details. And, the tragedy here is undeniable. But my position is that we have to be incredibly careful about retrofitting messy crime scene data to support a conspiracy theory.
I mean, sure, but the evidence...
Let me just say, private autopsies and independent investigators hired by grieving families are often explicitly sought out to provide a specific, comforting answer, to prove their loved one didn't choose to leave them.
Well, comforting might be the wrong word, but I get what you mean.
Right. The fundamental empirical facts remain. The victim's own gun was present, there was a shell casing, and there were bullets. I look at this and see bureaucratic opacity, defensive public officials, and standard municipal dysfunction. That is a far more likely culprit for the family's frustrating experience than a highly coordinated assassination by a tech conglomerate.
I see why you think that, especially when a gun is found at the scene. It grounds the narrative. But let's look at how the physical evidence actually functions in reality. Let's start with that bullet angle.
Okay.
Dr. Cohen noted a 30 to 45 degree downward trajectory. Just think about the biomechanics of that for a second. Try pointing your finger at the top of your own head at a 45 degree downward angle. It is an incredibly unnatural, awkward position to put your arm in to pull a heavy trigger, especially while supposedly inflicting a secondary head injury on yourself.
It's atypical, yes, but human bodies do strange things in moments of extreme trauma. I mean, people survive initial shots, they flail, they move.
But suicide scenes are almost never.
They are almost never as clean or logically straightforward as television procedurals condition us to expect.
Wait, stop right there. You can talk about the messiness of suicide scenes all day, but you cannot logically or psychologically explain away a bloody piece of a clip-in wig on the floor of a locked apartment. A wig that did not belong to the 26-year-old victim.
The wig is undeniably strange. I'm not discounting that.
And there was blood concentrated all over the bathroom, a fallen toothbrush and earbud separated from the victim. That strongly indicates a struggle from behind while he was brushing his teeth.
I get how it looks to a layman, but when investigators walk into a room,
They suffer from tunnel vision. If a cop walks into an apartment, sees a body and a gun, their brain immediately clicks into suicide mode. They actively filter out anything that doesn't fit that narrative. They ignore the bloody wig. They ignore the signs of a struggle.
right, but
That tunnel vision is exactly how a complex death scene gets cleared in 40 minutes, and it renders that official conclusion scientifically void.
I understand the frustration with the 40-minute clearance, truly, but the presence of his own weapon is a massive empirical anchor that we can't just float away from. When investigators see the victim's own weapon, it logically directs the flow of the investigation.
Okay, but that anchor loses its weight when you look at the timeline and the motive. We aren't just talking about a random tragedy. We are talking about a highly placed whistleblower with a massive target on his back. Balaji scooped pre-training data.
Right, the copyright issue.
He was named a custodian witness in the New York Times on November 18th. That means he wasn't just a guy with an opinion. He literally held the actual physical documents proving these companies were training their models on copyrighted data.
But is copyright infringement really enough to trigger a literal, kinetic assassination by a major American tech corporation?
When you understand the technical implications, yes. Balaji was blowing the whistle on the modulation index.
Which is the dial company's turn to tweak how the AI learns.
Exactly. He caught them turning that dial from 1.0 down to 0.5. That is a highly technical shortcut that fundamentally sacrifices data accuracy, but it saves them millions in computing costs. Billions of dollars are at stake here.
I hear the timeline, but
And he had an Associated Press interview scheduled for December 2nd. He had concrete plans to start a medical AI nonprofit. He dies hours after returning from a camping trip, right after receiving a birthday gift from his father. It completely defies logic that someone this forward-looking ends his life on a random rainy night just days before a major press expose.
I hear all of that, but I just don't buy that the motive scales to the alleged crime. Look closely at the mother's framing in the source material.
Okay.
She references Ilya Sutskever walking around with armed security guards. She references Sam Altman's lies and suggests these tech companies operate like a literal mafia.
Which is valid context for her state of mind.
Right. It reveals a deep, generalized distrust of AI leadership, which is completely understandable given the circumstances. But generalized distrust is not empirical proof of a targeted hit. Furthermore, you mentioned he was publicly named as a custodian witness on November 18th.
Yes, he was.
Think about the logic of that. If a company wanted to stop him from leaking documents, killing him after he is publicly named in the New York Times as possessing those documents is the absolute worst, highest visibility move a shadow conspiracy could make. It immediately draws the exact kind of scrutiny they'd be trying to avoid.
Unless the goal was to stop that December 2nd AP interview.
Or to prevent his future depositions, which his mother explicitly feared would expose wrongdoings far beyond simple copyright law. And if you think the conspiracy angle is a stretch, explain the act of cover-up.
What cover-up exactly?
The San Francisco Medical Examiner's executive director, David Sue, point-blank refused to reconsider the ruling despite the family's attorneys presenting the bizarre downward bullet trajectory. Medical examiners rarely reverse their initial findings based on pressure from a family's private legal team. That's standard bureaucratic defensiveness, not a cover-up.
But it's not just the medical examiner. Packages belonging to Suchir went missing from the apartment complex's shared room after December 31st.
Okay, package theft in San Francisco is...
Let me finish this thought. The family received zero response from the SF District Attorney and Representative Rokana. 2 of the 3 entrances to this purportedly secure building lacked CCTV coverage entirely. When you aggregate this, the missing evidence, the political ghosting, the unyielding bureaucracy, it paints a clear picture of systemic complicity.
We naturally want to blame a shadowy corporate cabal when things go wrong, but honestly, it's usually just municipal incompetence. You're trying to connect a stolen Amazon package in San Francisco to a medical examiner's office and a congressional representative.
It's the pattern, though.
Unreturned emails from heavily lobbied politicians, defensive public officials refusing to admit they rushed a crime scene, and packages getting swiped over the holidays, those aren't the hallmarks of a sprawling assassination plot. They are just a regular Tuesday in a dysfunctional city.
You really think it's just a series of coincidences?
To believe the cover-up requires a shadow conspiracy that seamlessly controls the police, the coroner, the media, and local package thieves. It defies logistical reality.
I see the logistical hurdle you're pointing out, but when you look at the sheer volume of physical inconsistencies, a downward bullet angle that requires contortion, a foreign bloody hairpiece sitting on the floor, and an allegedly compromised crime scene cleared in under an hour, the official story becomes scientifically untenable.
I understand why you see it that way.
The inputs simply do not match the output. And that is exactly why this case demands the thorough external FBI intervention the family is desperately seeking.
And my perspective remains that while this investigation was clearly handled with an appalling lack of transparency and basic human compassion for the parents, jumping to the conclusion of a highly orchestrated corporate assassination requires an extraordinary burden of proof.
Which is fair.
Unfortunately, that burden is currently obscured by immense grief, speculation, and just the inherent messiness of human tragedy.
I think where we absolutely converge today is on the reality that the authorities' handling of this grieving family was remarkably callous. Leaving a mother outside while clearing her son's apartment in less than an hour is unacceptable on every level.
We are entirely aligned there. We also agree that the tech industry, particularly the AI sector, operates with an alarming level of opacity. When you have immense corporate power intersecting with a deeply personal tragedy, the line between bureaucratic incompetence and active conspiracy becomes incredibly blurred in the public consciousness.
There is definitely much more to explore in the source material regarding the immense pressures placed on researchers inside these massive institutions. We will leave it to you, the listener, to form your own conclusion on the evidence presented today.
Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the show to help us keep these critical conversations going.
When you're dealing with an algorithm, you can eventually reverse engineer the code to find out why it gave you a broken output. But when you're dealing with the final tragic moments of a human life, sometimes the anomalous data points just sit there on the bathroom floor, waiting for someone willing to look at them. Thank you for joining us on The Debate.